Hey guys, tonight we journey through monsoon-soaked jungles where ancient Thai skywatchers scan the stars, bamboo rods in hand, and no, you probably won't survive their flood season unprepared. You're walking barefoot through tall grass soaked in warm rain, thick with the scent of wet earth and crushed lemongrass. The air hums not with traffic or neon lights, but with crickets, frogs, and the deep sky breathing through clouds. You duck under a thatched awning just as a fresh wave of rain tumbles down. In the distance, a hill glows faintly where a small group of robed figures stand in a circle. Bamboo stalks in hand, their eyes on the night sky. You've just stepped into ancient Siam, now known as Thailand. But forget airports and pad Thai. This is a world before electricity where predicting the rain was not just a curiosity, it was life or death. Rice, the sacred grain of Southeast Asia, lives and dies by the rhythm of the monsoon. Get the timing wrong and entire villages starve. Get it right and your granary overflows. No pressure, right? That's why long before satellites and Doppler radar Thai astronomers turned to something far more low-tech bamboo. Yeah, the same stuff pandas eat. Hollow-jointed, flexible bamboo. But in the right hands, it's a weather tool, a timekeeper, even a cosmic messenger. Imagine looking at a cracked bamboo stalk and somehow knowing it's going to rain in 2 weeks. These people did. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet slip slightly in the mud as you follow the bamboo bearers up a hill path. The clouds part for a moment and a veil of stars opens above, dazzling and strange. There's no Big Dipper here. No North Star. Instead, constellations shimmer with unfamiliar names: the crocodile, the rain turtle, the sleeping lady. They move across the Thai sky not just for beauty, but because they carry meaning. Patterns that have been read, argued over, and passed down for centuries. Your guide whispers, when that one vanishes behind the clouds, the rains come in 7 days. And you believe him. Bamboo doesn't just grow everywhere it listens. Ancient Thai villagers believed bamboo absorbed sky energy. Each joint, each node, each subtle crack told part of the season's story. On certain days, monks would cut specific stalks always from the east-facing slope, always before sunrise. They'd measure how many segments it had. Was the sap sticky? Did the inner walls rattle when shaken? Strange data points, but they were cataloged in memory, passed on through chants and parables. Historians still argue whether this was pure superstition or an encoded empirical system. Was it really science or just pattern-seeking wrapped in mysticism? After all, these were the same people who used crocodile dung as sunscreen, effective, weird, and possibly horrifying if you got it in your eyes. You squint up at the stars and try to imagine memorizing them without Google Sky. Just your eyes and time. Years of sitting in one place watching when Sirius appears over the eastern horizon, counting how many nights until the first frog chorus. That's how the ancients did it. Data collected in silence night after night, year after year. Monsoon season doesn't like surprises, and neither did they. The campfire crackles, a bamboo tube pops with steam sending up a puff of scented air, sticky rice and mango leaf. One of the astronomer priests picks up a stalk, tilts it, and listens closely. Then he smiles and says something in a local dialect. Your guide translates, "It will rain 2 nights from now. Good for planting." You're tempted to ask how he knows, but honestly, you're already 70% convinced this guy has psychic powers. The other 30% is hoping he's just reading humidity patterns through wood density. Science, but spooky. Mainstream historians will tell you that by 500 CE, communities across what is now Thailand were already integrating astronomy with agriculture. Lunar calendars were kept alongside bamboo records. Kings demanded annual monsoon forecasts from their astrologers and sometimes paid dearly when the forecasts failed. If a drought killed the rice harvest, someone's head would literally roll. It's nice to think about that pressure as you sip your coconut water, isn't it? But there's a quirk in the record, too. A set of ancient palm leaf manuscripts discovered in northern Thailand list not only astronomical observations, but also the songs of frogs and sighs of bamboo as part of their weather calculations. It sounds poetic, but it was deadly serious. If enough frogs sang at the wrong pitch in March, that could trigger a change in the forecast, and in planting decisions across an entire region. There's a faint creaking in the forest. Bamboo groves sway gently, hollow canes tapping against each other like bones in the wind. You're told that's the sound of spirits speaking the ancestors, reminding the living of the sky's promises. Or maybe it's just wind physics. Either way, it's oddly comforting. Some local elders today still argue that bamboo blooming is a warning so rare it only happens once every few decades and usually before disaster. Locust war pandemics. It's like the floral version of an air raid siren. You make a mental note to avoid any flowering bamboo in the next few months just to be safe. The rain lets up. The clouds pull apart like theater curtains, and a fat moon glows low over the horizon, buttery and swollen. You're told this is a good omen. The monk nods, the farmers relax. Rain is coming, but not too soon. Just right for the season. You sit back, the bamboo stalk still warm in your hand. You can't read it, not yet, but the grooves and joints feel like a code. Ancient Thai astronomers didn't need supercomputers. They had night skies intuition and a deep relationship with the land. You wonder if they knew more than we give them credit for. Another fire cracks, another frog sings, and the stars watch silently as they always have. You trudge deeper into the jungle, following a winding path shaded by towering banana leaves and tangles of vines. There's a warmth here that isn't just temperature, it's age. The trees seem to breathe, exhaling centuries of memory. Before Thailand was called Thailand, even before Siam entered foreign scrolls, this land pulsed with quiet, deliberate life. Long before cities like Ayutthaya and Sukhothai rose early, Thai-speaking peoples migrated southward from what is now southern China. They didn't bring armies or gold. They brought water wisdom. You hear it now in the rhythm of your footsteps through puddles, the slosh and squelch of living earth. These early communities settled not where it was dry and safe, but where the floods came like clockwork. Because in this part of the world, water is both terror and treasure. Imagine waking up in a bamboo hut on stilts, your toes dangling just above the floodwaters. A water buffalo snorts below, wading through the yard that was dry just last week. And yet no panic. This was expected, predicted, prayed for. The early Thai people were already attuned to a clock that ticked differently, one not powered by gears but by sky signs and seasonal breath. They noticed over time that certain stars vanished right before the first big rain, or that a certain wind would bring the smell of wet stone from the mountains. These weren't random. They were sacred signals. And right in the center of it all, bamboo. Not just any bamboo, mind you. Certain stalks were chosen from certain groves, always facing the sunrise, always harvested on auspicious days. You picture a weather calendar that's alive, leafy, and green. These early inhabitants believed that bamboo recorded the mood of the sky. If it cracked too soon after cutting, something was wrong. If it stayed tight and firm, that meant a balanced season. It was in their eyes, nature, whispering forecasts if you were quiet enough to listen. You kneel beside a cluster of worn stones in a forest clearing, once a village altar. Your guide gently brushes away soil to reveal faint etchings, star patterns. Not just decorative. These were calendars. Carved beside them are long, tapering grooves. Some scholars think these marked rainfall levels recorded over years, using lengths of vine or even dripping water into the leaf bowls. Historians still argue whether these early Thai cultures were just observing patterns or actively creating predictive models. But there's no question they knew the stakes. Rice wasn't just food, it was life insurance status and offering. Planting it too early could wash away seedlings. Too late, and the monsoon might dry out before harvest. So they turned to the skies and to each other. Oral traditions passed down observations in the form of songs and proverbs. You lean against a tree as an elder hums a lullaby to her grandchild. When the thunder sleeps 3 nights and the moon holds her breath, take your seeds and walk the wet earth. It's not Shakespeare, but it's weather data, encoded into poetry, passed on through lullabies and chants sung by farmers and monks alike. A quirky but fascinating discovery was made in the mountains near Nan province. Archaeologists uncovered a set of clay jars sealed with wax. Inside were preserved bamboo splinters, each painted with faint red and black stripes. One theory, early rainfall indicators, each colored mark tied to a specific lunar phase or seasonal marker, like an analog weather database that fits in a scroll tube. Fringe maybe, but compelling. And then there's the sound. You pause. The jungle is never silent, but now something changes, a low thrum like breath drawn in. The wind stirs the bamboo grove beside you. Long stalks sway and knock softly like percussion instruments. You're told this is part of the ancient observation method. The musicality of bamboo was no accident. The tone of each clack, the timing of the gusts all noted, remembered, woven into predictions. Some researchers believe that certain bamboo varieties were intentionally cultivated for this resonance. A natural barometer orchestra tuned by monsoon hands. Back in your imaginary early Thai village, the whole community participated in the ritual of reading the rain. Children counted frog croaks, women noted the smell of soil after the first warm wind, and elders debated over which bamboo stalks to harvest this year. It wasn't science in the way you know it, but it wasn't myth either. It was survival. Historians still debate the exact timeline, but somewhere around the first millennium CE, these observations began to formalize. Communities developed more systematic calendars, some tied to the movement of Venus, others to local deities associated with thunder and rice. But the bamboo never left the picture. Even when bronze tools appeared, even when kingdoms began to form, they still trusted the sound of hollow stalks in the night wind. As you sit and let the rain bead gently on your arms, you think about how different this all is from weather apps and 7-day forecasts. Yet maybe not so different. We still look to the sky, still get anxious when the clouds gather. The tools change, but the need doesn't. And perhaps the most poetic twist of all, modern Thai farmers in remote areas still listen to the bamboo. Not all, of course. Many have switched to more industrial methods. But in some valleys, the old rhythms still hum through the ground. A farmer notices that the bamboo cracked too early in the hot season and decides to wait. His neighbors scoff. But come harvest time, his rice stands tall. Coincidence or legacy? You stretch out beside the village fire pit, the scent of grilled sticky rice wafting through the air. The bamboo sways. A frog sings. And somewhere above, an old star vanishes behind the clouds right on time. You sit cross-legged under a sagging palm leaf roof, rain pattering rhythmically above your head like fingers tapping on a slow drum. In front of you, an elder leans over a low table scattered with palm bark carved stones and bamboo fragments. Her hands move with the confidence of 1,000 repetitions as she mutters soft calculations under her breath. It's not the kind of math you'd recognize, not a calculator in sight, but it is math nonetheless, rain math. This is where the sacred meets the seasonal. You're in the wet heart of ancient northern Thailand, where tracking rainfall wasn't just weather watching, it was a spiritual equation. They didn't just hope the skies would cooperate. They studied, recorded, and anticipated. And they did it using stars, frogs, and lengths of bamboo you could fit under your arm. Your guide explains this woman is one of the last locals trained in the old monsoon, count a system that combines lunar cycles with plant behavior, animal sounds, and yes, bamboo sap viscosity. You try not to look too overwhelmed. She gestures to a chart scratched into bark. Circles mark moon phases. Tiny slashes record nights of frog song. Bamboo segments drawn in rows are labeled with numbers and curling Thai script. You trace one of the lines with your finger. It's a rainfall projection based not on barometric pressure, but on the combined observations of earth, sky, and plant over time. And here's the kicker. Some of these methods were surprisingly accurate. Farmers could narrow down the start of the rainy season within a 5-day window, sometimes better than early colonial meteorologists armed with compasses and barometers. Historians still argue whether these results were flukes or the outcome of centuries of meticulous field testing disguised as folk wisdom. You shift on the woven mat as a small boy brings out a polished piece of bamboo. It's about the length of your forearm, capped with wax at one end. Inside, tiny stones rattle weather dice. The elder shakes it 3 times, holds it to her ear, and listens. Too soon, she says with a shrug. It will not rain for 4 more days. You try not to laugh, but then again, it did stop raining an hour ago, didn't it? This is the sacred math of the wet season. Based on repetition, yes, but also faith. For these communities, nature was not separate from the divine. The monsoon wasn't just a climatic event. It was a mood swing of the gods. Getting on their good side was wise. Ignoring their patterns risky. One fringe but fascinating belief held that the moon's color could affect the thickness of clouds. A milk moon, pale and low, was said to press the clouds thin and delay rainfall. A blood moon, ruddy and swollen, swelled the rain clouds to bursting. Sound absurd, maybe. But even today, there's a whisper of truth in the relationship between lunar cycles and tides, and if tides, then maybe rain. Who knows what early sky watchers knew that we've since forgotten? In the temple courtyard just beyond the hut, you hear a slow chant begin. The novice monks are reciting verses dedicated to Phaya 10, the rain god. Offerings are piled at the base of a lotus-carved altar. Rice bananas, a small folded paper frog. You're told that these offerings aren't bribes. They're nudges, encouragements to keep the natural order ticking along. And yes, there were consequences for misreading the signs. A whispered story reaches your ears of a village elder who once miscalculated the planting date by 12 days. The rains came too soon, seedlings drowned, the harvest failed. And though no one blamed him openly, he withdrew from his post, stopped making predictions, spent the rest of his life sweeping temple courtyards and listening to the bamboo sigh. In one of those sure why not moments of history, there's even record of a community that used pickled scorpions as part of their forecast ritual. One text describes how the creatures were bottled with fermented mango and left near a bamboo flute overnight. If they stopped moving before sunrise drought, if they didn't, well, it was going to be a soggy month. You're not sure what the science is behind that one, but hey, early data analysis was a creative field. The elder points to another chart. This one overlays moonrise times with the appearance of a certain star, what we now call Altair. In this region, it marked the start of wet threshold, the period where the soil begins to hold moisture and rice roots can take without rotting. It's delicate timing. 1 week off and you might as well start weaving baskets instead of planting food. But even with all this calculation, these people knew better than to assume total control. That's the part modern minds often miss. To them, knowing the math wasn't about beating nature, it was about dancing with it. Being humble enough to listen, patient enough to wait. That's why even the most confident forecasts were still followed by ceremonies, chants, and small acts of humility. Just in case the gods were watching, or listening through the bamboo. A modern scholar once compared these ancient Thai systems to open-source weather software written in plant language. Everyone contributed. Everyone had access. You could argue about readings, interpretations, omens, but the bamboo never lied. You lie back on the woven mat now, eyes tracing the roof's simple weave. It's the same pattern you saw carved into the bamboo segment earlier. It matches the lines of the star chart. The chirps of the frogs outside sync with the rhythm of the elder's voice. And for a moment, you understand why these systems worked, not just because they observed patterns, but because they lived inside them. As the elder folds her bark chart and sets aside the bamboo tube, she smiles gently. 4 days, she repeats. You believe her now. You hold a freshly cut stalk of bamboo in your hands. It's slick with sap and cool to the touch, and it hums softly when you tap it with your fingers like a shy drum hiding in plain sight. This isn't just a plant. This is an ancient Thai barometer. And if you knew how to read it, you'd know exactly when to expect your laundry to get soaked by surprise rain. Bamboo, as it turns out, is more than just a panda's lunch. It's fast-growing, hollow-strong, and acoustically gifted, basically nature's Swiss Army knife. In ancient Thailand, it served dozens of purposes, construction music containers, even weapons. But tonight, you're only interested in one of its more obscure talents, meteorological whisperer. You're sitting beside a low table in a stilted wooden house perched above a marshy plain. It smells like wet wood and jasmine smoke. Beside you, an elderly monk gently rotates a long bamboo rod in his hands. He doesn't look at you. His eyes are closed. He's listening. He explains that certain bamboo types, especially Bambusa blumiana, react subtly to shifts in humidity and atmospheric pressure. When dried and cut on the right day, the resulting stalks can make audible pops, creaks, or whistles as the weather changes. Some villagers kept them under their beds or hung them near doorways. If you heard a crack at night, you knew the clouds were coming. You raise your eyebrows. He nods seriously. It never lies, he says. Historians still argue whether this practice was genuinely predictive or simply observational superstition, kind of like those old sailor sayings about red skies and shepherds. But modern studies have noted that bamboo can and does expand or contract rapidly with humidity. The trick, of course, is separating coincidence from correlation, especially when your entire rice crop hangs in the balance. But bamboo's meteorological resume goes deeper than sound. You examine another stalk, this one split lengthwise. It's etched with symbols, moons, waves, tiny frogs. Your guide explains that this is a Maihor Fun, a rain-reading bamboo. These weren't just listening tools, they were written records, passed down through generations, often entrusted to monks or sky readers in the temple hierarchy. A typical Mai-Hor might have 12 segments, each representing a lunar month, and in each segment, elders recorded rainfall patterns, star alignments, and strange happenings. A rat infestation, a moon that rose red and refused to fade, a frog song that began in the wrong season. These details were etched or painted with natural dyes and sealed with resin. The more you look at the stalk, the more it resembles a diary. A diary written by the sky, transcribed by bamboo, and interpreted by very patient humans. And then there's the sacred crack. You jump slightly as the bamboo in your lap emits a dry pop. The monk opens one eye and grins. There, he says, just a small one. Maybe a shower later. You try to act nonchalant, but part of you wonders if your body temperature messed with it. Or maybe the ghost of an ancient weather priest is playing tricks. Some Thai communities, particularly in the northeast, believe that bamboo grown on sacred ground like temple groves or mountain ridges was spiritually sensitive, not just to weather, but to celestial events. One bit of fringe lore suggests that a bamboo stalk would lean toward the direction of the strongest astrological influence during certain lunar phases. If true, it would have made bamboo not only a weather tool, but a kind of directional compass for the metaphysical. You picture a group of elders squinting at gently leaning bamboo during a solar eclipse, muttering, "Ah, definitely Mercury's fault." It's like the horoscope version of a weather vane. But joking aside, you can see how such beliefs grew out of a genuine reverence for bamboo's responsiveness. It changes color subtly with sun exposure. It sings in the wind. Its segments are natural units of measurement. And it's everywhere. This wasn't some rare mystical object. It was in every home, every grove, every fence post. That universality made it a perfect vehicle for community-wide observation. Anyone could use it. Everyone could compare notes. In the flat plains near Udon Thani, you learn of another bamboo practice, communal drying. Stalks were cut and left to dry in shared courtyards. Villagers would note the order in which they cracked. One that split clean and early was seen as a truth-teller. A stalk that stayed silent for days. Suspicious, too stiff, unreliable. That one might get burned as an offering to appease Phaya Than, the rain god, just in case it was hiding secrets. The bamboo wasn't always treated with soft reverence. Sometimes it was interrogated like a reluctant witness. You lean forward and press your ear against a thick stalk lying near the window. Nothing. But in the silence, you hear a low groan, not from the bamboo, but from the sky. Thunder in the distance. The monk smiles. "It told you first," he says. A mainstream historical note during the early Ayutthaya period, 14th and 18th century bamboo tools were still in use alongside Hindu-Buddhist astrological systems. Court astrologers would sometimes consult bamboo logs after drawing up star charts, especially if the charts were ambiguous. Bamboo became the tiebreaker. A fringe twist one rural manuscript, rarely translated, claims that in years of extreme drought, certain bamboo stalks actually wept. Drops of sticky fluid would form at the joint's so-called sky sap. Was it resin condensation alchemy? The jury's still out. But those drops were collected, stored in shells, and offered in silent ceremonies to summon rain. You hold your bamboo closer now, just in case. The wind picks up slightly and the stalks outside begin to click together. It's not music, not exactly, but it's rhythm. A language. One you're beginning to understand. The monk taps your bamboo gently and points upward. "Watch the clouds," he murmurs. "When they move like fish in a shallow river, it's time." You have no idea what that means, but you nod anyway. Your sandals slap gently against ancient stone steps slick with mist and moss as you climb toward a temple that seems more carved from the mountain than built upon it. The wind carries hints of incense, damp wood, and something metallic ozone, maybe. A promise of thunder. Behind you, the jungle murmurs in steady rhythm, and above, thick clouds swirl like smoke from a slow fire. You're heading to where sky talk becomes sacred command. At the summit, the temple sprawls elegant but weather-worn, its tiled roof curved like a naga serpent mid-strike. Stone statues flank the entrance, half-men, half-bird creatures with wings outstretched toward the heavens. And at the center of the courtyard, under a worn canopy, sits the weather watcher's seat. A raised platform with a bundle of bamboo rods, a stone compass, and something that looks suspiciously like a coconut husk telescope. Welcome to the domain of Pyathan, the Thai god of thunder and rain. Here, monsoons aren't just meteorological events, they're divine dispatches. The astronomer priests who occupy this temple don't just track the skies, they interpret divine mood swings. A rainstorm isn't just low pressure, it's a god's whisper or scream. You lower yourself beside a young novice who's polishing bamboo tubes with coconut oil. He whispers that these aren't just tools, they're offerings, carved with verses anointed with sacred herbs and blessed during special chants. Some are hollowed out to hold star water collected during full moons and used in rituals designed to clarify the rain. You wonder what clarify the rain even means. But then thunder rumbles not directly above, but somewhere far to the west. The sound rolls across the sky like a slow drumbeat. The elder priest nods approvingly. That's Phayatean, he says. He's listening. Historians still argue whether this thunder deity was originally a local animistic spirit or a syncretic blend of Hindu and Buddhist influences. Some trace him to Indra, the Hindu god of storms, repackaged for a Southeast Asian audience. Others insist Phayatean is older, rooted in pre-Buddhist forest worship, born from the need to explain the seasonal violence of rain. You sit in silence as the priest begins to chant. It's low and rhythmic, somewhere between a lullaby and a warning. Around him, young monks begin placing bamboo sticks in shallow bowls of water. They adjust each by angle and orientation, like sundials waiting for stars. The ritual has begun. This isn't just spiritual theater. The alignment of bamboo rods in water is part symbolic gesture, part observational science. If the rods drift toward each other, it's a good sign. If they repel or tip unexpectedly, it may signal imbalance in the elemental forces, read either drought or flood. It's essentially waterlogged divination. Your guide leans in. If 3 bamboo rods fall over before the final chant, he whispers, "We'll get a lightning storm by tomorrow night." You watch as the first one wobbles in the water. Fringe detail alert. Some temples maintained rain drums, large hollowed logs or stone basins filled with water. When tapped in certain patterns, they were said to attract clouds, or at least give villagers something productive to do while waiting for them. And let's talk about the sky maps. Inside the temple library, really more of a bamboo and thatch alcove, you unroll a scroll painted on mulberry bark. It's soft yellowed and studded with tiny drawings, stars, clouds, serpents, and moons. These were the cosmograms used to track and predict rain cycles. Not entirely scientific, not entirely mythical, something in between. One constellation shaped like a crouching tiger was believed to predict wind direction. Another, resembling a lotus blossom, marked the turning point between dry and wet seasons. You point to a cluster that looks oddly familiar, 3 bright dots in a row. Your guide smirks. "Not Orion's belt," he says. "That's the rain goat. It pees when it's angry. You've never respected goats more." Back in the courtyard, the final chant ends. 2 bamboo rods are floating calmly. One has tipped but not fallen. The elder priest nods. "Mild rain," he says. "Good for young rice." You notice something tucked behind his altar, a weathered bamboo flute. He lifts it, blows gently, and lets out a tone so low and soft you feel it more than hear it. It's said that in ancient times, the priests would use such flutes to speak to the sky, tuning them differently, depending on what kind of rain was needed, short, heavy, soft, or scattered. Fringe, yes, but even now, sound and vibration are being explored as weather-modifying possibilities. Maybe the ancients were onto something, or at least asking the right questions in beautiful ways. You ask if anyone still does this. The elder shrugs. Sometimes, he says, when people are scared. It strikes you that weather watching in these ancient temples wasn't just about agriculture. It was about psychology, comfort, assurance. If the monk says it'll rain in 2 days, then you can sleep tonight. No need to dig extra canals or pray longer. The gods have spoken. A mainstream record from the Sukhothai era mentions astronomers of the court trained in both Buddhist doctrine and skywatching. They were required to interpret celestial events for royal decisions, including war harvest and temple festivals. Some were trained right here in temples like this, high above the paddies and clouds. Lightning forks in the sky, brief, jagged electric blue, and then it's gone. A moment of silence follows. The monks pause. The elder makes a gesture, part blessing, part warning. The ritual is over. You bow, unsure if you're supposed to, but something about the air feels cleaner now. Settled. As you walk back down the stone steps, your fingers brush the bamboo rod tucked in your belt. You wonder if it will pop tonight, or hum, or roll in your sleep. Either way, the gods are watching. And maybe, just maybe, they're in a good mood. Inside a teakwood palace gilded with gold leaf and high-arched ceilings, the smell of jasmine oil and ink mingles in the warm, humid air. You step over an inlaid floor that creaks faintly under your bare feet and find yourself in the quieter wing, far from royal feasts or elephant parades. This is the nerve center of power. You've probably never thought about the rain room. At a long lacquered table sit 5 scholar officials in layered robes, each with scrolls spread before them. Bamboo rods stacked nearby and anxiety wafting off them like steam from a rice bowl. They're preparing a monsoon report for the king. And no pressure, just the fate of the realm riding on their forecast. Here in the royal court of Ayutthaya, say, around the late 1400s, weather prediction was a matter of statecraft, not just agriculture. The timing of rice planting dictated temple ceremonies, tax collection military campaigns, and even royal weddings. A good harvest meant full granaries and happy spirits. A poor one that could spark uprisings, famine, or worse, royal disapproval. You slide into a shadowed alcove and observe as one scholar leans over a bamboo tube, split in half, gently tapping its edge with a stylus. A faint crack runs through one segment, too early for the season. He furrows his brow. Another consults a sky chart sketched on mulberry paper eyes, flicking between constellations and annotations. You recognize the rain goat again, still peeing. And here's the fun bit: the scholars don't always agree. 3 weeks early, one says. 2 weeks late, another mutters. The third just shrugs. The frogs aren't singing. What do you want me to do, Lee? Historians still argue whether these court astrologers were genuinely trained in scientific methods or simply following religious rituals dressed up in academic robes. But records from Ayutthaya and later from Bangkok's early Ratanakosin period show detailed weather logs kept in bamboo scrolls annotated with everything from frog counts to dreams reported by the king himself. Yes, dreams. If the king dreamed of drowning, cancel the planting. Immediately. The king enters not dramatically, but quietly. He's barefoot, his silk robe whispering as he walks. The scholars snap into reverent silence. He sits at the head of the table and signals for the reading. The chief astrologer stands. He speaks in slow, steady tones. Rain will come in 5 days. It will be strong, but not prolonged. The eastern wind will dominate. The soil will hold. The spirits are satisfied. He ends with a low bow. The king nods once. Then tell the water carriers to prepare the dikes, he says, and move the statue of Phaya Ten to the Lotus Hall. You don't exactly know what that means, but everyone in the room does. The bureaucratic machine of rain is now in motion. Outside the rain room, officials will notify farmers to begin plowing. Musicians will rehearse the Rob Kwan Cow, a rice spirits calling ceremony. Even royal astrologers will start their prayers. Everyone from tax collector to midwife adjusts their rhythm to the weather calendar. And it all starts with bamboo. One of the more fringe records stored today in a dusty corner of the National Library in Bangkok references a bamboo weather court. In times of drought or conflicting forecasts, bamboo rods from various regions were summoned, like witnesses to be interrogated in front of the king. Priests from each province presented their rods, spoke of their behavior, their cracks, their dreams. The rod that matched the king's dream most closely was declared correct. Democracy, but for sticks. You can't make this up, but the stakes were real. Forecast wrong and someone might end up imprisoned or worse. There's a tragic note in a 17th century chronicle about a royal astrologer who predicted late rains. The court delayed planting. The rains arrived early, ruined the seedbeds, and triggered a brief food shortage. He was sentenced to live in isolation in a ruined temple until the next monsoon came and proved him right or wrong. Spoiler, he didn't make it. Spoiler, he didn't. So yeah, rain prediction, high-risk career path. The most seasoned astrologers developed deep reputations. One named Chantha Wong in the 1600s was said to have never missed a forecast in 30 years. He claimed to dream the clouds. At his death, the king ordered his bamboo rods buried with him, sealed in a teak coffin, alongside star maps and a rain flute. Today, that coffin has never been found. Somewhere in a flooded field or under a modern rice paddy lies one of the strangest meteorological time capsules in the world. You pull away from the memory and watch as the rain room begins to clear. The king departs, the scholars relax slightly. One uncorks a jar of palm wine with a grin. We live another week, he says. Outside, young scribes begin copying the forecast onto bark scrolls for distribution. One of them carries a copy to the palace gate where a rider waits with a satchel. These forecasts were sent along the kingdom's roads and rivers, delivered to temple communities and village elders. Think of it as the original weather app, only printed on leaves delivered on horseback and blessed by monks. Still, you can't help but wonder how much of this was data. How much was show? Historians debate that. Some argue the entire court forecasting system was a ritualized form of guesswork dressed in gold and incense. Others point to the precision of certain records, monsoon arrival dates within 3-day windows across decades as evidence of something deeper. Maybe not modern science, but not guesswork either. You step into the outer corridor of the palace just as a breeze lifts through the windows. Bamboo chimes sway their notes soft and deliberate. One strikes a perfect A sharp and your guide mutters, "Ah, that's an east wind tone." Might be right after all. Below the rice fields ripple like wet silk under the wind's breath. Farmers prepare, scribes carry scrolls, and high above the bamboo waits. One crack and it all begins again. You're crouched in a dusty temple storage room half lit by slanting golden light. The air smells like old paper, faded incense, and mildew. Around you, layers of history are tucked into the cracks. Scroll tubes stacked like firewood fragments of carved wood panels, a fossilized lizard in the corner that no one has the heart to move. And then, just behind a leaning Buddha statue, your guide pulls something flat and delicate from a cloth wrap. It crackles as it opens mulberry bark paper soft as aged cloth, but still holding ink with surprising clarity. You hold your breath. Because in your hands is a star chart from a time before telescopes, before compasses, before Siri told you it might rain. Drawn in swooping loops and neat columns are constellations, some familiar, many strange. A tiger with stars in its teeth. A fish made of 4 pinpoints. The rain goat, again, ever majestic, still doing its business across the heavens. These are the sky maps of ancient Thai astronomers. They didn't need observatories, just patience, clear skies, and a deep bench of bamboo tools to read not just the stars, but how they danced with the seasons. You trail your fingers over the chart, noticing that some stars are connected by threads of ink, while others are isolated, surrounded by notations in old Thai script. Your guide leans in and points at one corner. This part here marks when the moon rises after the rain goat disappears. That's when they'd bless the first planting. You nod slowly, trying to make sense of how a distant patch of sky could direct life on Earth. But here it did. These maps were not passive art. They were active tools used in concert with bamboo records, frog choruses, and dreams to build a matrix of seasonal prediction. Mainstream scholars accept that many Thai communities used a lunisolar calendar tracking both moon phases and solar positions. But what surprises modern historians is the degree of local variation. In some villages, the new year began with the first croak of a tree frog. In others, it started when Venus kissed the horizon at dusk. And the charts reflected that diversity. That's why no two bark star maps are quite the same. One might emphasize the snake of the south sky, believed to coil tightly when the monsoon would be short. Another might feature the sleeping lady, her ankle lined with stars that supposedly predicted early typhoons if they vanished too soon after the summer solstice. Some maps even had movable parts, thin bamboo slats threaded through the bark to slide over constellations and indicate heat zones. If a certain star cluster fell within the hot zone for too long, it foretold a dry spell. Fringe, sure. Ingenious, definitely. As you study the map, a light breeze stirs the edges of the bark, and you catch a glimpse of something tucked behind it. Another scroll, this one sealed with black wax. Your guide breaks the seal and unrolls it gently. It's a record of star alignments paired with rainfall logs. Year by year, stars noted, rains recorded. Some entries are dry and factual. Star by Noi dipped low, rain came in 5 nights. Others are poetic. The sky turtle wept, and so did we. The scholar who wrote these notes, probably a temple astronomer, was doing more than observing. He was layering meaning, linking celestial patterns with earthbound outcomes, building over decades a predictive language. You sit with that thought for a moment. We like to believe we invented predictive analytics in the 21st century. But here, under a leaky temple roof in the 1400s, someone was already charting weather probabilities using ink bark and stardust. Historians still argue whether these early Thai star charts were indigenous inventions or influenced by outside cultures. Indian astronomy certainly made its way eastward via Buddhist trade routes. Chinese star systems floated down riverways and into temple libraries. But the blending was distinct. Thai sky maps had their own logic, their own emphasis on stars that barely get a footnote in other cultures. And then there's the storytelling. Each constellation came with a tale. Some were clearly adapted from Hindu epics. Others were uniquely Thai, like the rain turtle, a cosmic tortoise who carried clouds on its shell and only swam across the sky during planting season. Or the bamboo maiden who danced nightly between 2 stars and was said to cry when the rains came late. If dew fell on her star during a dry month, elders would postpone seed scattering by a full week. It's easy to dismiss these tales as folklore, but they were more than that. They were mnemonic devices, ways to remember complex seasonal patterns in an oral culture. If you knew the story, you knew the sky, and if you knew the sky, you knew the soil. A quirky aside, one particularly odd star map from a ruined mountain temple included a constellation labeled the Drunk Chicken. No one's entirely sure what it's supposed to represent. The drawing is interpretive. But local legend claims that if the drunk chicken tipped west too early in the month of Songkran, farmers should prepare for 3 weeks of surprise hail. It sounds absurd until you remember that random April hailstorms do still hit northern Thailand now and then. Coincidence or celestial poultry with a message? You step outside, scroll still in hand, and look up at the dusky sky. It's clearer now, the clouds parting just enough to reveal scattered stars blinking down. Your guide points to one cluster. There, he says, that's the rain goat's nose. You squint. Sure, you'll take his word for it. A breeze lifts your hair. Somewhere nearby, a bamboo grove rustles softly. In the fading light, the stars begin to arrange themselves not into scientific charts, but into patterns of memory, into stories, into subtle silent reminders of when to sow, when to wait, and when to gather under the palm-thatched roof and listen for a single sacred pop from the bamboo. You crouch beside a rice paddy shimmering in the moonlight, the muddy water warm between your toes and thick with croaking music. Frogs, crickets, and an occasional splash from something bigger all join the nocturnal concert. But to the local sky watchers and farmers beside you, this isn't background noise. It's data. Living, croaking, chirping data. A silver-haired woman beside you cups her hands to her ears and closes her eyes. She isn't meditating, she's counting. Every chirp, every croak, every rhythmic trill gets sorted in her mind like spreadsheet rows. You glance down at her bamboo tally stick marked with fine notches. One for each frog song interval, one for each insect chorus. Welcome to the auditory wing of ancient Thai meteorology. The part where frogs were forecasters and crickets chirped out temperature shifts better than any mercury thermometer. Mainstream historians generally accept that animal behavior played a role in early agricultural calendars, but in Thailand, this acoustic method was particularly refined. It wasn't just the frogs or loud must be rain. It was that frog, that pitch, that tempo during that moon phase. Specificity was everything. You listen now, trying to mimic her attention. There's a repeating tick-tick-tick from the water's edge. That's a paddy field frog, your guide tells you. Locals call it UEA hawn or sneezer. It croaks most when the soil moisture is about to rise, basically a living humidity meter. One long drawn-out trill joins in. That's the buang sang, a tree frog associated with evening storms. If it sings in the morning, the rains are arriving 2 days early. If it stays silent for 3 nights straight, dry spell ahead. Crickets, too, had their place in this system. You're told that the number of chirps in a 10-second span correlates closely to temperature, a phenomenon now widely recognized by modern science. It's called Dolbear's Law. But the farmers of northern Thailand were onto this long before entomologists gave it a name. One particularly nerdy but lovely detail villagers would sometimes carry cricket cages during the early wet season and time their chirps with a bamboo water clock. If the cricket sped up its rhythm in the hour before sunrise, they'd begin plowing that very day. You picture yourself with a cricket in a box weather station and try not to giggle. But it worked, and still does in a way. Your guide tells you about her grandfather, who kept 3 frogs in a carved stone basin beside his bed. Each night, he'd observe them for mood, sound, and movement. If one tried to climb out before dusk, he'd adjust the irrigation schedule for his fields. She says he wasn't ever wrong. You suspect the frogs might have actually been running the show. Historians still debate how seriously these methods were taken at the national level. Were frogs and crickets considered legitimate sources of data, or just charming side notes to the star charts and bamboo logs? Some court records from the late Ayutthaya period mention choral signs, clearly referring to nocturnal animal sounds. One entry dryly notes, "The frogs did not sing and the floods came unannounced." It's both a weather report and a haiku. Of course, not all frog behavior was welcomed. One temple manuscript includes a list of false prophets frogs who croaked outside their designated month. These were suspected of deceiving the spirits and were relocated to nearby marshes. Not banished exactly, but definitely side-eyed. A quirky fringe theory exists about a village that tied tiny bamboo bells around select frogs. The pitch of the bell's jingle was used to confirm the frog's movement pattern. If the bells jingled 3 times before midnight, It foretold continuous rain for 3 days. This might have been more for amusement than science, but hey, multitasking frogs are always a win. You're handed a flat slab of wood with grooves carved into its surface. It's an ancient sonic tally board. Each groove represents a category of sound: croak, chirp, trill, rasp. As frogs sang, elders would move tiny stones along the grooves, building a sound map of the night. The next day, this board would be reviewed alongside bamboo readings and star positions. A full-body forecast made of wood voice and stars. Even the tempo of silence mattered. Your guide stops you mid-step and points to the hush that's just fallen. No croaks, no chirps, just wind and the distant flap of bat wings. That's not nothing, she says, that's something. In these systems, a sudden quiet was often a sign of abrupt change, what we'd now call a pressure front or storm break. So much for silence being relaxing. You settle on a bamboo bench as the frogs start again. One rhythm, then another. Soon it's a cacophony. But to the trained ear, it's a coded message. A prediction wrapped in wet throats and vibrating air sacs. What strikes you most is how seamlessly this bioacoustic system fits into the broader fabric of Thai rainfall prediction. Bamboo measures the shift. Stars chart the timing. Frogs give the warning. It's not superstition. It's symphony. And there's something comfortingly human about it. No need for machines, just ears, just time, just attention. You lean back and close your eyes. For a moment, you imagine yourself relying on this system. You'd listen for the third croak past midnight. Wait for the buzz of a ground cricket. Compare it to the crack in your bamboo rod. Then look up if the rain goat's tail flickered behind cloud. It was time. Maybe not foolproof, but personal. And maybe that's what made it powerful. The frogs hit a sudden crescendo. Rain begins to fall. Of course it does. You sit cross-legged under a mango tree juice dripping from your fingers as you bite into a fruit so ripe it practically melts in your mouth. The air is thick and heavy, pregnant with rain. Behind you, elders sit in a semicircle on woven mats, sipping lukewarm tea and telling stories. You catch snippets between bites, and soon you realize this isn't just gossip or entertainment. These are weather reports, cloaked in legend, laced with myth. In ancient Thailand, the line between myth and measurement didn't just blur, it vanished. Monsoons weren't tracked so much as interpreted like messages written in a secret sky script. The elders didn't just say, "It rains in June." They said, "When the serpent coils tighter and the rain goat lowers its horns, the sky will crack open." Poetic, yes. But don't let the charm fool you, these tales were often shockingly accurate. Tonight you're deep in a rural village nestled along a swollen riverbank. A place where oral history isn't quaint, it's survival. And when it comes to rain, these people know their stuff. You sip your tea and listen. The first story begins with the Naga, a great celestial serpent said to slither across the night sky. When the Naga sleeps, the rains stay away, but when it writhes, thunder rolls, clouds burst, and rice paddies rejoice. According to your guide, this story isn't just symbolic. It's linked to the appearance of a winding constellation, visible only in the early monsoon months. When it arcs low across the horizon, rain follows, almost every time. Next comes the tale of the rain drum, an invisible object said to hover above the land. When the gods beat it, rain begins. But it only sounds after the 1,000 frog chorus sings. The story, it turns out, is a coded observation. Frog choruses precede heavy rains by days. That much we've already seen. So the tale of a divine drum. Maybe just poetic timing. Historians still argue whether these myths emerged purely from superstition or evolved as mnemonic devices tools to help an oral society remember complex seasonal cues. Either way, the outcome was the same. These stories kept people fed safe and in sync with nature. Another elder leans forward and begins the story of May Posop, the rice mother. She's a goddess, yes, but also a barometer of communal health. When treated with respect through rituals, careful planting, and offerings, she blesses the rains. When neglected, she withholds them. Now here's the twist. These stories were often layered with measurable actions. Forget her offerings, that meant the planting wasn't blessed, which meant it happened too late or too early, which meant, failed harvest. Suddenly, May Possop's wrath seems less divine and more like consequences of poor timing. Your mango is now just a pit in your palm. You flick it toward a goat who gives you a look that suggests deep disapproval. The storytelling continues. Another elder brings up the skyboat legend, an ancient tale of a golden canoe that sails across the stars. When it tips, the rains fall. When it glides straight, the season holds. This boat corresponds to a distinct formation of stars that appears tilted in the lead-up to the wet season. The elders watched its tilt and decided when to start preparing irrigation ditches. Again and again, the myths show their dual purpose: entertain but also instruct. Their beauty was in their flexibility. You didn't need a PhD in meteorology to understand that when the bamboo maiden weeps a faint veil around a certain moon, you'd better get your seeds in the ground. One scroll from the 15th century describes the dream rain test. A person, often the village elder or monk, would fast and sleep in a bamboo grove during the new moon. Their dreams were said to contain the season's fate. If they dreamed of fish leaping skyward, it meant floods. If they dreamed of cracked earth, a drought. Fringe, yes. But the dreamer would cross-reference this with bamboo crack timing and frog song. Basically, a triple-check system dream sound in wood. Not bad for pre-industrial analytics. You ask your guide if people still use these myths today. She nods slowly. Not everyone, she says, but some. Especially when the apps say sunshine and the frogs say otherwise. A quirky detail emerges in one tale, the moon laugh. If the full moon appears unusually large and low with a golden-orange hue, the elders say it's laughing amuse that people forgot to prepare their fields. This phenomenon, of course, corresponds to a supermoon during high humidity. And yes, historically, it does often appear shortly before a major monsoon surge. Coincidence or celestial trolling? Your guide shares one last story about a man who ignored the bamboo maiden's tears. He laughed when the frogs sang early. He didn't listen when the old monk said, "The stars lie crooked this year," and so he planted late. The rains came too soon. The rice drowned. He lost everything. The tale ends with a soft warning. The sky does not speak loud, but it always tells the truth. As the stars begin to flicker overhead, the stories fade into humming. One elder softly sings a lullaby about a star turtle that walks backward when the rains are shy. It's half song, half instruction manual. You close your eyes, letting the words wrap around you like a damp blanket. The myths don't contradict the measurements. They complement them. They give emotion to observation, context to numbers. They let people hold the sky in their stories and still put rice in the pot. You lie back under the mango tree full of fruit and fable. The frogs sing. The bamboo maiden sighs in the breeze. And somewhere far above the naga stirs. You jostle gently in the back of an ox cart, wheels creaking over packed earth, as you roll past scattered farms and sleepy border villages. A dog barks. A woman tosses water on dust to keep it from rising. And somewhere ahead, 3 cultures are about to collide inside a bamboo tube. This is the outer edge of what we now call Thailand. But centuries ago, these borderlands were less defined, more fluid. You're heading toward one of the many cultural crossroads where Indian cosmology, Chinese calendar systems, and local Thai traditions met, not in debate halls, but in rice fields, temple courtyards, and, yes, the occasional bamboo hut. As your cart stops near a village shrine, you hop down and stretch your legs. The air here smells different, smokier, thicker, with incense and roasted corn. 3 men sit at a table. One consults a parchment scroll inked with elegant Chinese lunar glyphs. Another turns the pages of a tattered Sanskrit manuscript, eyes narrowed. The third, he's tapping a split bamboo rod and listening for a sound. Welcome to the early hybridization of Thai weather forecasting. What's so fascinating is that none of these systems canceled the others. They were stacked, cross-referenced, interwoven. One community might use the Chinese lunisolar calendar to set their initial planting date check. Indian nakshatra lunar mansions for refinement. And finally consult a local monk who sniffed the bamboo and listened for frogs, just to be sure. You watch as the man with the Chinese calendar unfurls a cloth marked with 24 solar terms, jieki they're called. These terms divide the year based on sun position and seasonal signs. Farmers across East Asia still use them. One called grain rain arrives in late April and signals the ideal moment to sow. And surprise, ancient Thai farmers learned to trust it too. But they didn't just adopt it blindly. They Thai-ified it. Instead of observing just temperature or dew point, they watched what the frogs did during grain rain. If the frogs stayed quiet, the date shifted. If bamboo cracked before the 5th solar term, early wet season. If it stayed silent until the 7th, you wait. Every system got filtered through local cues. The scholar reading Sanskrit chimes in. He's referring to a passage in a borrowed Jyotisha text, ancient Indian astronomy blended with astrology. According to it, the position of Jupiter in the house of Cancer aligns with a flood cycle every 12 years. Incredibly, there are temple records from Changsayan that back this up. When Jupiter shifted in that particular way, rains were stronger and riverbanks often overflowed. Historians still argue whether this pattern is real or just cherry-picked pattern matching, but modern hydrologists have quietly noted that certain planetary cycles do seem to coincide with long-range rainfall trends. The ancients may not have known the why, but they noticed the when. Then, of course, there's the bamboo man. He's the anchor in the trio. While the others debate planetary alignment in solar terms, he leans over the bamboo stalk, gently blowing into it. A faint whistle emerges, high-pitched, almost avian. He nods, then dips the bottom of the stalk into a bowl of still water. He's testing what the others only theorize. And here's where it gets juicy. The bamboo is the common denominator. The ancient Chinese had bamboo weather tools too. So did the Indian forest communities, but the Thai use was more tactile, more improvisational, less math, more feel. In one village archive, there's a story of a three-school forecast. A century ago, the king requested a monsoon report from border scholars. The Chinese monks predicted late rain. The Indian astronomers said early flood. The local Thai monk, he sniffed the bamboo, pointed at a crooked cloud, and said, "Plant tomorrow." The rains came that evening. Fringe story, probably. But you can imagine the scene, can't you? What makes this blend so unique is that none of these traditions saw themselves as competing with one another. They layered their systems like flavors in a curry. Calendars gave you timing. Astronomy gave you cycles. Bamboo gave you confirmation. And frogs, well, frogs just kept singing no matter who was in charge. You walk through the village now past small homes where families still grow rice and sugarcane. In one corner, a boy is spinning a wheel etched with the zodiac animals of the Chinese calendar. His grandmother watches with amused tolerance. "We listen to that," she says, "but we watch the sky more." In another home, an old man tends to a bundle of bamboo rods, each painted with different symbols, some Thai, some borrowed from Sanskrit, some invented altogether. He's building what he calls a sap thong, Dwan or month's whisper. Each stalk is selected based on the current astrological phase, the most recent frog chorus, and get this, the smell of the soil when wet. Yes, these guys could smell the season. Literally. Mainstream historians acknowledge that soil smelling was a legitimate part of ancient agricultural preparation. The scent of petrichor produced when rain hits dry earth was noted in several cultures. But few gave it the prestige that ancient Thai farmers did. If the soil smelled sweet before thunder, they'd call an early planting. If it stayed metallic smelling until after the frogs sang, they waited. Even in modern border towns today, you'll find shrines with calendars in 3 languages. Next to a Thai monk's lunar chart is a Chinese scroll predicting summer storms. Hanging above them all, bamboo wind chimes, always bamboo. Always that soft click, click, click when the wind turns. One charming note, there's a type of bamboo used only in multi-faith forecasting ceremonies, known locally as Mai Chan Chet. Roughly the compromise stalk, it's said to grow evenly spaced nodes, making it ideal for all systems. If it cracks before the first frog sings, it overrides all forecasts. One crack to rule them all. You sit under a tree as the scholars continue their gentle debate, chuckling between contradictions. There's no tension, no winner. Just a trio of traditions that have learned to nod respectfully to each other while still tapping their own stalks, smelling their own soil, and watching their own stars. As the sun dips low and the frogs warm up their voices, you realize something: the science doesn't have to be exact. It just has to make people feel ready, balanced, in tune. Whether that's from Jupiter frogs or a single bamboo crackwell that's between the sky and the listener. You push through a dense grove where the air suddenly feels heavier, the leaves a deeper green, the silence a little too watchful. And then you see it right in the middle of a clearing, a bamboo grove in bloom. It's beautiful. Delicate tassels flutter like silk threads from the tops of the stalks. Pollen floats in the sunbeams like lazy ghosts, but your guide doesn't smile. She pulls you back gently, whispering, "We don't go closer." Because in Thailand, when bamboo blooms, you run. It might sound odd to fear flowers, but bamboo doesn't play by normal rules. Most species flower only once every few decades, sometimes once a century. Then, after their great floral finale, they die. All of them. Simultaneously. And in places like Thailand, that's not just inconvenient. That's ominous. Historically, bamboo flowering has been associated with catastrophe. It's not just a botanical footnote, it's an alarm bell. You're told the old belief goes like this: when bamboo flowers, disaster follows. Famine, flood, war, plague. Take your pick. It's a harbinger. and a fairly reliable one too. The logic is rooted in ecology and observation. When bamboo blooms, it expends all its energy. The groves die off en masse. This sudden die-off produces dry, brittle tinder that fuels wildfires. But more importantly, the flowering is followed by an explosion of seeds, millions of them carpeting the forest floor. Guess who loves bamboo seeds? Rats! And not just a few cute ones, an army. The historical record from the northeast region of Isan tells of an infamous flowering in the 1800s. The bamboo bloomed. The rats came. They ate everything seeds crops stored rice. The famine that followed killed thousands. In folk memory, it's known as Faibua, the bamboo hunger. Historians still argue whether bamboo flowering directly causes famine or simply coincides with climatic shifts that trigger it. But to rural villagers, the cause is clear. Bamboo blooms, then bad things happen. You watch as your guide kneels near the grove, not entering it, just observing. She whispers an old saying, "If the bamboo gives its flowers, the land takes something back." Some temples even recorded flowering years like eclipses. Scrolls from Chiang Mai list years where the bamboo rained yellow, each followed by footnotes of distress sickness, crop failure, temple repairs postponed. One fringe manuscript links flowering to celestial misalignment, claiming that when two specific constellations meet above a blooming grove, the rice spirits weep and kings lose sleep. It would almost be funny if it weren't for how often the pattern holds. You ask if anything can be done. Your guide shrugs. We pray, we prepare. We move the rice stores to higher ground. You examine one of the flowering stalks. The flowers are tiny, fragile, barely visible, but what they trigger is massive. Entire groves commit suicide. Ecosystems shift, forests burn. Then it rains and the seeds sprout all at once. New bamboo shoots pierce the soil in droves, fast and relentless. In that regrowth, there's a kind of rebirth. But you're told it doesn't feel hopeful when you're watching your rice vanish under a tide of rodents. Oddly, modern science backs much of this. The last recorded synchronized flowering of Melocana bacifera in Southeast Asia led to massive rat swarms and a regional famine in neighboring Myanmar. Thailand, too, has had pockets of rodent blooms following bamboo death cycles. But locals didn't wait for spreadsheets to prove it. They saw the flowers and got moving. There's even a kind of folklore alert system tied to blooming. In some villages, bamboo watchers, yes, that's a real role, would monitor known groves and report any hint of floral emergence. If flowers were spotted, temple bells rang 3 times in the early morning, a symbol of mourning and a call to prepare. One fringe tale tells of a monk who predicted a military invasion after seeing bamboo flower prematurely in a valley. He claimed it was a mirror bloom, a spiritual omen. The war came a year later and the valley was razed. His bamboo staff is still kept in a local shrine preserved in lacquer and shadow. You're told not to touch the flowering stalks, not because they're dangerous, but because they're tired. Let them sleep, someone says. As you back away from the grove, you realize something strange. This warning system has no politics, no interpretation. The flowers appear and the people listen. There's no debate, no data model, no news broadcast. Just nature's once-in-a-lifetime whisper. Yet the reaction is collective. People store extra rice, they shore up roofs. They plant backup fields further up the hill. Because even if disaster doesn't come this time, it might, and the bamboo has spoken. You pass a stone monument on the edge of the grove, an old one, moss-covered, inscribed with a single word in Thai Chow. It means to owe, or to be in debt. When the bamboo flowers, the villagers say we all owe the earth something. As you walk away from the grove, the air feels lighter. The frogs resume their chorus. A breeze rattles the non-flowering bamboo nearby, soft and whispery like rain approaching. You glance back once just to make sure those delicate tassels aren't following you. They're not. But the sense of warning lingers. You duck your head under a sagging reed curtain and step into a circle of firelight. The air is thick with incense torch smoke and something sharper ozone, maybe. A storm is building somewhere behind the horizon, but for now, here in this forest clearing, the sky is quiet. The only lightning around is a metaphorical, because tonight the astrologers are about to duel. No swords, no poisoned darts, just bamboo rods, star maps, and egos as high as the temple spires. This midnight ritual happens once a year, often during the late dry season, when everyone's edgy, sweaty, and desperate for the rains to come. Traditionally held in sacred groves or temple courtyards, the duel isn't just ceremony. It's a test of skill, reputation, maybe a touch of theater. Think of it as academic mud wrestling, but with chanting and astrology. You take a seat on a log near the edge of the circle. Torches flicker, two men kneel across from each other. One wears a crown of dried lotus petals, the other a faded crimson sash with embroidered stars. In front of them lie the tools of the dual mulberry bark scrolls, bamboo staffs, copper bowls filled with water, and, oddly enough, a plate of sticky rice. That's for later, or for bribery. The judge, a stern woman with a voice like wind through temple bells, stands and announces the challenge. Predict the first thunder, name its date, name its direction, name its cause. It sounds poetic, but make no mistake, it's a serious game. Because whoever wins will influence how an entire community prepares for planting. And whoever loses, well, let's just say they might spend the season doing extra chores around the temple. The first astrologer unfurls his chart. He points to a cluster of stars near the horizon, what you now know as the rain goat's ribcage. He murmurs an incantation and taps a split bamboo rod, holding it vertically over his head. Nothing happens, and then faintly it pops. His eyes glitter. He notes the date. 7 nights from now, from the east, brought by the heavy horn of the rain goat. A good start. His opponent smirks and holds up a smooth gourd filled with water. He drops in a wax seed that floats lazily, then circles to the edge. He watches it spin, then consults a bark scroll scrawled with calculations. 9 nights, he says, from the south. Wind-driven, but carrying thunder. The cloud will rise like a snake, not a bull. The crowd murmurs, you feel weirdly tense. This is the part of Thai culture most outsiders never see: a mix of scientific observation, mystic interpretation, and, let's be honest, just a little bit of showmanship. But it worked. Because in the absence of weather satellites, you had bamboo tubes and the sky's slow turn. Historians still argue whether these duels were just for spectacle or genuine data contests. Some say they were tied to court approval. Others think they were ways to let communities place confidence in their seasonal planners, kind of like crowdsourcing belief. Let the crowd watch you get it right or wrong. A quirky detail emerges when the judge announces a bonus challenge. Name the sky's emotion. You blink. Excuse me. The older astrologer closes his eyes, listens to the frogs for a moment, then replies, impatient. The crowd nods solemnly. This seems completely reasonable to everyone but you. Now it's the younger astrologer's turn. He picks up a bamboo flute and plays a low, wavering note that mimics the rising wind. Jealous, he says. It sees the sea has taken too much and now it will flood the fields. That one gets a few murmurs of approval. You scribble a note in your imaginary notebook. Apparently the sky is moody. Good to know. And here's the interesting twist. Each of these astrologers uses a different blend of techniques. The elder one relies on bamboo readings, frog songs, and constellations. The younger prefers wind patterns, water bowls, and dream interpretations. Neither is mocked. Both are respected. Because diversity of method was always part of the system, it's only in recent centuries that we started needing everyone to agree on a single truth. But back then, multiple models coexisted peacefully, like different apps forecasting different weather and you deciding to pack an umbrella anyway, just in case. The judge declares a draw. Both men bow. Both predictions are carved into small pieces of wood, which are then burned with sacred herbs. The ash will be scattered on the fields in the morning, a way to invite the forecast into the soil. You're handed a leaf-wrapped packet, sticky rice and grilled banana, post-duel snack. Even astrologers need carbs. A fringe story pops into your mind about a ritual duel gone wrong. 2 rival monks once predicted wildly different monsoon dates, each claiming divine inspiration. The community, unsure whom to believe, planted twice. One crop failed, one thrived. The following year, both monks quietly retired, probably for the best. You finish your snack and glance up at the sky. The stars shimmer gently overhead. The constellations pulse with their usual indifference. But you know better now. That indifference is a story if you know how to read it. One last ritual remains tonight. A bowl of moon-reflecting water is passed around. Each person looks into it and speaks the first word that comes to mind. It's said that the collective reflection helps confirm or challenge the predictions. Your word. Shift. The judge raises an eyebrow. An auspicious word, she says, then returns to packing away the scrolls. The fires dim. The frogs sing louder. Somewhere far off, thunder growls. Just a whisper for now. The stone path twists through dense bamboo groves, each step shaded by stalks that sway just slightly, whispering things you can't quite hear. As you follow your guide into the cloistered walls of an ancient forest monastery, you get the feeling you're about to cross into territory people don't talk about loudly, maybe not at all. The air smells of old sandalwood damp stone and something vaguely herbal. Forbidden forecasts, it turns out, have a scent. This isn't the temple tourist visit. It's older, stranger, and far more private. Here, weather reading isn't just celestial, it's secret. You step over a low threshold into a cool, dim meditation hall where an old monk waits with a bamboo staff that looks more like a relic than a tool. He doesn't speak right away, just gestures for you to sit. This, your guide whispers, is one of the last keepers of the outlawed rainfall spells. Yes, outlawed. It sounds dramatic, but in some historical periods, especially during certain reigns of the Ayutthaya and early Ratnakasan kingdoms, ritual weather prediction was regulated. Too many failed forecasts could incite panic or rebellion. So, kings centralized power banning unauthorized monks or astrologers from making public weather statements. Get it wrong, and you might face exile, or worse, temple demotion. The horror. But of course, people don't stop watching the skies just because someone says no. So in hidden monasteries and quiet corners of the forest, a different kind of sky watching continued. Silent, patient, unofficial. The monk hands you a small bowl of still water. You're told to hold it just so angled toward the open window where the sky peeks through. He mumbles something in Pali, taps his bamboo rod gently against the floor, then leans over and watches your reflection. You try not to move, or blink, because apparently this is part of the ritual known as luafon, or rain coaxing. It's not about asking for rain directly, it's about revealing the attitude of the rain spirit specifically through water's reaction to skylight. If Jupiter reflects clearly, it means patience. If the moon glows but Saturn is distorted, expect volatile showers, and if the water darkens too quickly without wind, the monk simply frowns and refills the bowl. Bad sign. Historians still argue whether these rituals were symbolic or subtly observational. Some say they were metaphors for internal states. How peaceful your mind was dictated how well you read the water. Others believe these monks trained for years to perceive things like subtle atmospheric haze using puddles and bowls as makeshift barometers. But here's the twist, these were not fringe figures in rags. Many of these so-called forbidden forecasters were highly educated, trained in both Buddhist scriptures and astronomy. They simply chose not to operate under the palace's watchful eye, or weren't allowed. One secret method your guide mentions, half-whispering the lotus drip. In this technique, a sacred lotus leaf is placed over a bowl at night. As dew collects and eventually falls into the water, the timing, sound, and spacing of the drops are interpreted. If the first drop arrives before midnight and echoes 3 times, rains are forecast within 4 days. If the leaf stays dry all night, something's off in the elemental balance. It sounds absurd until you realize that dew formation is tied to humidity, cloud cover, and air pressure. In short, they were reading the microatmosphere before it became a full-scale weather event. You ask the monk if he still practices the old ways. He nods solemnly, but only in private. People think we're magicians, he says, or mad. He smiles slightly. Let them think. There's a deeper layer to this too. The astrology they used was often wrapped in coded language. One scroll found hidden in the false bottom of a temple chest includes references to sky snakes and 3-legged winds. Scholars now believe these were metaphors for pressure systems, dry currents, and converging jet streams. Translation, they were doing meteorology through metaphor, like if your local weatherman said, "A jealous dragon from the north meets a tired goose from the south, expect drizzle." And still they got it right more often than not. You're shown one last secret tonight. The monk takes you to a side chamber where a cracked bamboo rod rests on a small shrine encased in glass. It's said to have split down its center during a prayer session on a dry season morning. Hours later, the sky opened in an unseasonal storm that flooded the lower paddies. No one had predicted it. No one. Except him. There's a small plaque beneath it with a single word carved in gold leaf, "Satning up." It means silence. Fringe detail. One ancient monk's manual, translated only partially, includes a weather spell involving prolonged stillness, where the practitioner must lie face down for exactly 4 hours at dawn, watching the dew accumulate between individual blades of grass. If the dew bends left first, it's a dry month. If it leans right, get your buckets ready. No one's totally sure which way is left when you're upside down and lying in wet grass at 5 a.m., but still props for commitment. Before you leave, the monk places a small, smooth bamboo disc in your palm. It's inscribed with a spiral, for watching, he says. Not for reading. You bow low, uncertain of the proper ritual, and step back into the grove. The sky is still quiet, but the bamboo rustles just slightly. A breeze or an answer. As you walk away, you wonder how many quiet monks still watch the stars in secret. How many listen to puddles or sleep beside lotus leaves? How many secret forecasts float beneath the surface of the official world, whispered through cracked bamboo and still water? You don't know, but you're glad they're out there. You're standing on a wide, sun-baked trail, the kind of straight and dusty path only foreign engineers would love. There's a surveying rod jammed into the earth. Strange marks scrawled in French on a leather-bound notebook, and a white helmet swinging off a saddle horn. Welcome to the colonial chapter of the Rainfall story. The era when bamboo cracked, but the men with monocles just rolled their eyes. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as French colonial influence crept into parts of Southeast Asia, including the neighboring territories of Laos and Cambodia, and tiptoed toward Siam's border, something else arrived with its scientific arrogance. European surveyors and experts brought steel instruments, mechanical gauges, and a resolute belief that their tools could measure the monsoon better than any frog or bamboo ever could. You observe from the shade of a tamarind tree as two men argue near a flooded paddy. One holds a brass compass, the other a carved bamboo stick. The Frenchman gestures at his anemometer and mutters about pluviometry. The local farmer simply raises his eyebrows and points to the cracked bamboo hanging from his porch. It split early, it warned them. The Frenchman didn't listen. The result? A misread river, an unprepared village, and a flood that swept away not just rice, but half the wooden footbridge they were so proud of. This wasn't an isolated incident. Throughout the colonial period, European engineers dismissed local forecasting methods as folklore at best, dangerous nonsense at worst. Rain rituals were discouraged. Bamboo omens were labeled pagan, and monks who practiced weather reading were sometimes removed from temple leadership roles under new administrative reforms. Historians still argue how much was lost during this time. The push for Western scientific dominance often bulldozed subtler systems that worked precisely because they weren't standardized. Bamboo forecasting wasn't about controlling nature. It was about dancing with it. The colonists, however, preferred calculations and concrete. You wander through the remnants of an old colonial outpost now overtaken by moss and vines. A broken barometer lies in a rusted case. Next to it, a local temple still stands, its wall etched with a lunar chart and a faded drawing of the rain goat. One system decayed in a few decades, the other's still in use. There's a story half lore, half archived about a French administrator in northeastern Siam who refused to delay a new dam project despite bamboo readers warning of an early monsoon. The laborers begged for just one more week. The engineers insisted. The rain came 5 days early, turning the construction site into a slurry of tools, timbers, and swearing men. The dam eventually got built and leaked for 15 years. Quirky side note. Some colonial officers did start to pay attention. One French botanist stationed near Ubon Ratchathani secretly kept a bamboo forecast diary alongside his official weather logs. It was never published, but scholars found it later in a Paris archive. His notes include sentences like, "The old monk's flute cracked yesterday. Rain likely within the week." Spoiler, the monk was right more often than the barometer. In border villages, a quiet resistance formed. Locals would attend colonial briefings with polite nods, then consult the village elder after sundown for the real forecast. Bamboo stalks still cracked in kitchens. Frogs still got counted. And when in doubt, people planted based on the moon, not the memo. It wasn't just forecasting that got steamrolled. The rituals tied to rain, the chants, the offerings, the ceremonial frog songs were also targeted. Labeled superstitious, they were discouraged, especially in schools under colonial curricula. And yet in backyards they survived. Your guide tells you about her great-grandmother who led women in secret night prayers beside a bamboo grove during the 1920s. They weren't trying to rebel, they were trying to grow food. The bamboo still talks, she says. Even when the French built roads over it, there's a melancholic beauty in that resistance. The people never fully rejected new tools, they just refused to abandon the old ones. Bamboo forecasting didn't disappear. It went underground, whispered, hidden behind fans, passed down in recipe-like fragments. Crack at new moon rain in 10. Frog on a dry stone, wait. Dream of flooded stairs, move your seed rice uphill. One preserved letter from a Thai administrator during the 1930s includes a frustrated note. Peasants still refusing to accept rain table calculations. They prefer to ask the flute man. The flute man was, of course, a monk with a bamboo instrument used to channel wind and moisture readings by tone. Fringe theory time. One early 20th century monk supposedly disguised his rain charts as meditation manuals to avoid confiscation. Hidden in the verses were star positions, rainfall records, and instructions for watching puddles reflect Saturn. It's basically guerrilla meteorology. You cross a small bridge rebuilt after yet another failed colonial forecast. On one post hangs a piece of bamboo tied with red string. It looks decorative, but your guide tells you it's functional. A quiet warning. If it shifts in the wind just right, the locals know to expect runoff from the hills within 2 days. And yes, it still works. As colonial powers receded and Thailand modernized on its own terms, some of the traditional forecasting tools reemerged, but with a mix of pride and irony. Schools taught Western science, but grandmothers still sniffed the soil. Rainfall graphs appeared in newspapers, but frog counts remained quietly accurate in the backs of people's minds. Tonight, under a dusky sky, you pass another village shrine where a bamboo tube stands tall beside a satellite dish. One is carved with lotus and moon. The other is rusted, barely functioning. And you wonder which one still speaks the sky's language. Maybe both, maybe neither. But you know which one the rats ignore and which one the rice trusts. You blink at the buzz of fluorescent lights overhead, harsh white and utterly unromantic. Welcome to the 20th century. Gone are the forest shrines, bamboo flutes, and frog songs in the dark. Instead, you're standing inside a squat, concrete building lined with glass cabinets and humming machines. This is a meteorology office, the kind with air conditioning bar graphs and government seals on clipboards. But out back, there's a bundle of cracked bamboo drying in the sun. Because old habits don't die easy. You're in mid-century Thailand now, somewhere around the 1960s. Radios are replacing drums. Forecasts come from towers, not temples. And suddenly, bamboo has competition. After World War II, Thailand underwent a modernization surge. Infrastructure boomed. Technology arrived with foreign aid programs and regional development projects. Weather stations were established across the country, equipped with rain gauges, barometers, and radio towers that beeped out forecasts like metallic crickets. Farmers were encouraged to tune in every morning and trust the voice from the city. And many did. But not all. You ride with a young technician out to a rural village where a shiny new rain gauge has just been installed. The villagers eye it like it might explode. The technician sets it up carefully, calibrates it, and explains in a measured, rehearsed tone how it will record rainfall to the millimeter, providing accurate data that can be sent back to the capital. One elder listens politely, then gestures to a cracked bamboo pole hanging by her kitchen door. "It already told us," she says. You look at both instruments. One gleams. The other is pale and splintered, but only one has been right for 73 planting seasons. Historians still debate whether this coexistence was conflict or convergence. Did modern meteorology replace traditional methods or just layer on top of them? Evidence suggests the latter. Across much of rural Thailand, villagers accepted the new data, then double-checked it against their frogs and bamboo, just to be sure. In fact, a 1974 study noted that rice farmers in the Northeast were more likely to follow a grandmother's frog count than a radio forecast if the two disagreed, and when they did agree, well then everyone could relax. You're shown a grainy photo from 1981, two men, one in a government-issue lab coat, the other barefoot and shirtless, both crouched over a paddy field. Between them, a cracked bamboo tube and a rainfall chart printed on carbon paper. They're nodding together, smiling, both of them predicting rain within the next week. There's something deeply Thai about this blend. Not rejection, but remix. Technology wasn't feared, but it wasn't obeyed blindly either. The wisdom of the elders was not erased. It was annotated. A quirky moment from the archives in 1969, during a particularly intense El Niño year, a meteorology station in Phitsanulok issued a drought warning. Farmers were told to delay planting. Most complied except one stubborn village. Their bamboo had cracked early. The frogs sang out of season. They planted anyway, and they got one of the region's only successful harvests that year. The station director reportedly shrugged and said, "Maybe they have better frogs." That kind of quiet respect crept back in. Not officially, of course. Government reports didn't mention bamboo, but some local officers began consulting village elders before finalizing their own public advisories. Off the record, as one technician put it, "I asked my auntie what the frogs said first." Radio towers continued to rise. Weather balloons launched. Forecasts became more precise, more detailed. But accuracy didn't always win hearts. A crack in a bamboo stalk that arrived in the night. that still felt more real than a stranger's voice on the airwaves. In the 1980s, a temple in the north began a quirky experiment, pairing traditional sky readers with official weather staff. Once a month, they'd meet, compare notes, and document the results. The bamboo pop the frog song, the lotus dew all matched against humidity readings, satellite maps, and rainfall charts. The results surprisingly aligned, especially on long-range seasonal trends. The monks' predictions were correct within 5-day windows, about 70% of the time. In a field as fickle as monsoon forecasting, that's not bad at all. Fringe detail. One village school began offering bamboo science classes in the late 90s. Students were taught to measure segment density track, split patterns, and compare them with meteorological data from Bangkok. It was part tradition, part curriculum, kind of like a science fair if the project could tell you when to harvest cassava. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. Some officials worried that this hybrid approach undermined national standardization, but others saw it as a strength, what one newspaper called a forecast with a local accent. Even today in roadside stalls and rickety farmhouses, you'll find bits of bamboo tucked into rafters or hanging near stoves. Not always as active weather tools, but as quiet reminders. Pieces of memory, maybe even little charms just in case the frogs don't feel like singing. And if you ask around, you'll hear the same line repeated in dozens of accents from Bangkok to the back hills. The forecast said no rain, but the bamboo cracked. So people cover their seed baskets anyway, just to be safe. You return now to that government weather station. The air is still cool. The computer hums softly. The technician smiles and shows you the latest satellite map. Storms are gathering far to the west. He points to them, nods confidently. Then he glances out the window toward the porch, where the bamboo is hanging. Still drying, still waiting. You're sitting cross-legged in a research station that smells faintly of coffee printer toner and, well, damp bamboo. Because yes, there's still bamboo here. Not in the way it once was, hanging from kitchen rafters or split and sniffed by elders at dawn, but in a more modern pose, neatly labeled, digitally cataloged, and resting beside an iPad on a polished table. You're staring at a scientist in a Patagonia fleece vest holding a bamboo rod like it's a USB stick from another universe. And somehow it fits. We thought it was nonsense, she says, grinning sheepishly. But then the data started lining up. You're in Chiang Mai University's agricultural lab, where a curious new project is underway. It's part ethnography, part climatology, and part humble pie. The goal: compare ancient rainfall prediction methods, including bamboo readings, with modern forecasting models. And the results, well, let's just say the frogs and elders are having a bit of a renaissance. The scientist places 2 bamboo segments on the table. One cracked during a high humidity spell, the other remained silent. We match the cracks to shifts in barometric pressure, she says, scrolling through a chart. Turns out certain species of bamboo are like living weather sensors. We just didn't listen properly before. She swipes again. On screen, a side-by-side comparison of rainfall forecasts, one from modern satellite readings, the other derived from a triangulation of bamboo splits, frog songs, and lunar positions drawn from village data. They're almost identical. Historians still argue whether ancient Thai astronomers really understood the physical forces behind the phenomena they tracked, or whether they simply observed well and remembered better. But either way, their predictive power was no fluke. The project here is called Wisdom Echo. It collects oral traditions from elderly villagers and monks across Thailand, digitizes their weather stories, and feeds them into a climate model as qualitative data points. They even tag them by confidence level, certain folkloric fringe, but interesting. One input reads, "Rain goat low at dusk." Bamboo cracked at moonrise, frogs loud, high flood risk. The computer ranks it just below a satellite alert for rising storm pressure. You're handed a headset. A recorded voice walks you through a simulation. If you had followed this bamboo reading from Yasothon in 1962, you would have predicted the unseasonal flood 4 days earlier. Another compares a monk's 1975 moon bowl reading to that year's NOAA storm report. It's spooky. And then there's the outreach program. Students now visit rural villages not just to educate, but to learn. They watch elders listen to crickets. They record chants used during moon alignments. They observe monks hold lotus leaves over water bowls to coax the sky. Then they return to labs and plug it all in. Some villagers are surprised. "You want to know about the flute I used when the frogs stopped singing?" one asks. "No one's asked me about that in years." One fringe but delightful revival. The return of the listening porch. a bamboo structure built specifically to amplify the crack of stalks in changing weather. A few eco-lodges have picked up the trend, marketing it as forest-sourced mindfulness with meteorological perks. You step outside the lab now, where a small rooftop garden buzzes with bees. In one corner, students sit around an elder from Frey who's explaining how to read bamboo tears, those tiny droplets that form on cut bamboo during extreme humidity. It's not the water, she says, it's what the water wants. You don't really get it. But the student beside you nods solemnly and jots it down. The blending of old and new isn't always smooth. Some scientists roll their eyes. Some villagers worry their sacred rituals are being turned into data sets. But increasingly there's respect, collaboration, the understanding that what was once dismissed as myth might have simply been waiting for a better vocabulary. You recall a story from earlier, a forecast carved into bamboo buried with an astrologer. You ask if any of those predictions still exist. The lab director smiles. We found one in a private shrine, sealed in wax. She opens a drawer and gently pulls out a length of bamboo. It's faded, slightly cracked, but still intact. Along its side, inked in delicate strokes, are 12 notations. Star alignments, frog counts, lunar positions. At the bottom, a single word, ruang flow. They modeled the season described on this stalk. The forecast, a midsummer drought followed by late floods. The actual rainfall pattern that year, documented by colonial weather staff, matched almost exactly. You exhale. Of course it did. There's something poetic, even a little rebellious, about the idea that bamboo is still speaking. In a world of data overload, climate anxiety, and algorithmic forecasting, these rods grown in silence, cut with care, still carry weight. Still hum in your hands. Still crack in the night when the sky changes its mind. You're shown a new app the team's developing. It's called Fa Fan Sky Rain. It tracks modern weather forecasts but includes optional alerts based on bamboo reader networks across northern Thailand. Think frog chorus activated, east wind turning, cracked stalk, and Mae Hong sun. Maybe pack a raincoat. The best part, people use it. Back in the field, you meet a young rice farmer who checks the app each morning, then walks outside and listens for crickets. It helps, he says. But I still trust my ears more. You smile, he grins. The frogs croak. Somewhere above, the moon glows behind drifting clouds, and a nearby grove of bamboo lets out a gentle pop. It's going to rain soon. You lie back in a hammock tied between two sturdy poles, your hands tucked behind your head, as the breeze sways you slowly, gently. Above the sky is a vast dome of deepening violet, the last fingers of sunlight slipping away behind the hills. Around you, the land quiets. Frogs begin their first tentative notes, and somewhere in the distance, bamboo taps against itself in rhythm with the wind. You're on the edge of a rice field, the stalks tall and full, almost ready to harvest. The air smells faintly of soil water and something sharper, the unmistakable tang of storm on the horizon. But no one here is panicking. Everyone already knew this was coming because someone read the bamboo. You watch an old farmer adjust the straps on his water buffalo. He doesn't check a weather app. He doesn't tune in to a radio station. He simply glances up at the stars, then down at a stalk of bamboo propped against a fence. It split delicately, like it breathed too hard and cracked from the strain. That's it, he says, half to himself. The final rain. You close your eyes and think back on the journey you've taken through temples and courtyards, bamboo groves and government labs, frog choruses and weather duels. A whole civilization spent centuries learning how to speak with the sky. And they didn't just guess, they listened. To the stars blinking overhead. To the frogs in the fields. To the curve of the moon and the tension in a single stalk of grass. To the hollow rattle of a bamboo rod held just right at just the right moment in just the right silence. Historians still debate how much of it was science and how much was poetry. But for the people who lived by these signs, there was no difference. The sky was alive, the land was listening, and the rain was never late. It always came exactly when the world was ready for it. You think of the monk who stared into puddles until Jupiter blinked back. The farmer who trusted a frog's midnight song over a minister's decree. The child who counted cricket chirps while her grandmother whispered the rain goat's story. You think of the thousands of cracked bamboo rods scattered across centuries like a secret library storing the breath of the sky. A final gust of wind stirs the leaves. The bamboo grove clicks softly beside you, almost like applause. Or maybe a farewell? Rain begins. Not harsh, not angry, just steady, familiar. The kind of rain that has fallen over Thai paddies for thousands of years and will keep falling long after you're gone. It mists the rice gently, it slides down banana leaves, it taps your skin like a drum beat you'd almost forgotten you knew. You smile. The stars blur behind clouds and the frogs sing louder now, confident, confirmed, in full voice. The final rain has arrived. And now, as the rainfall softens into a hush, you let your breath fall into rhythm with it. The world slows around you, no need to listen anymore. No more signs to interpret, just the gentle sound of everything being exactly as it should be. Let the scent of wet rice and fresh bamboo drift into your thoughts. The old monk's chant fades like incense into the night. And the stars, well, they're still there, even if you can't see them through the clouds. It's okay not to know every answer. It's enough for now that others once listened so closely to the world they lived in, they could feel the seasons turn before the first drop ever fell. Let your shoulders relax. Let your eyes close. There's nothing else you need to predict. The rain has come, the sky has spoken, and the bamboo has gone quiet for now. Sleep well, stargazer.